friends, welcome back to our channel Home and Beyond.
जिसमें कोई views नहीं आते.
Hello friends and welcome back to our channel Home and Beyond.
इस वीडियो में हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं
Is Dubai expensive?
Yes.
It is really expensive.
Yes, it is expensive, but it depends in which aspect you are comparing. It is a rental, then it is expensive, and also you have to look, you are comparing with which country.
Yes, Dubai is very expensive indeed. We really need to balance the money that you want to spend and where you want to spend it.
Dubai is expensive and Dubai is not expensive as well. So it totally depend on you how much you want to control your budget.
Investopedia has actually defined cost of living as the amount of money needed to cover basic expenses such as housing, food, taxes, healthcare in certain place and for a certain period of time. However, when we compare at the global scale, we need a baseline or a starting point to compare between two cities, which gives rise to the definition of cost of living index. Cost of living indexes are meant to compare the expenses an average person can expect to incur to acquire food, shelter, transportation, energy, clothing, education, healthcare, childcare, and entertainment in different regions.
अरे कहना क्या चाहते हो?
In simpler words, how many goods and services does a given sum of money purchase in a certain location is termed as cost of living index. Let's take 100 USD with the baseline. If 100 USD can buy 3 to 4 goods or services in New York, then how many goods or services can it buy in another city? In this case, the 100 USD becomes my baseline to compare the cost of living in 2 or more cities, and thus it is my cost of living index. We have considered New York City and 100 USD as a baseline to compare the cost of living of different cities. If in any city, the cost of living index is higher than 100, then it is more expensive to live than New York. And if it is lower than 100, then of course it is cheaper to live than New York. However, Numbeo has also taken the same methodology and has compared the cost of living index with New York and 100 USD with different other countries or cities of the world. For example, by comparing the cost of living index, New York itself stands as rank 7, whereas Zurich in Switzerland ranks number 1, which means Zurich is more costlier than New York City. Or in other words, 100 USDs can buy lesser goods and services in Zurich than New York. It has also compared other major cities of the world like Sydney and Toronto in Canada. However, Dubai is 160 and the cost of living index is 68.83, which means with spending same 100 USDs, you can buy more goods and services in Dubai than in New York City. However, Mumbai ranks around 473, which means Dubai is almost 3 times expensive than Mumbai.
Now, to answer the question whether Dubai is expensive or not, it depends upon a lot of factors. First of all, how much you're earning in this country. If you're earning a pretty standard salary, then you may find Dubai to be a bit less expensive. But of course, if it's the other way, then certain cases or certain areas in Dubai or expenditures in Dubai can be pretty much skyrocketing.
We have identified 6 major heads on which we spend our hard-earned money, and those are
accommodation, transportation, utilities, grocery, miscellaneous, last but not the least, telephone bill or connectivity.
the major chunk of our money goes into accommodation. We stay in a 1 BHK apartment which is located in the heart of Dubai, which is Dubai Sports City. We spend about 3200 AED per month on the apartment itself, which is again divided into several factors. We'll come to it in a go. While choosing an accommodation, there are several factors that you should take into consideration. Firstly, how far are you staying from the center of the city? Secondly, how far are you from your office? Here in Dubai, when you're renting an apartment, you get several options like studios, 1 BHK, 2 BHK and villas, penthouses, etc. So the cost depends on that. Secondly, you can rent out a furnished apartment, semi-furnished apartment or a not unfurnished apartment. Like the apartment that we stay in is a semi-furnished apartment. So when we moved into the apartment, it actually had the basic amenities and the furniture, so we did not have to spend money on buying those. However, if you actually choose to take up an unfurnished apartment, then you may shop for your basic amenities from places like IKEA or Home Center, and you have online options like dubaizl.
The prerequisite expenditures before you take an apartment are of course ijari, which is the contract for a year. Then you need to pay the 3 months advance to the owner and 1 month's brokerage and also 1 month security deposit. 90% of the chances when you're taking a home from a broker, you need to pay your brokerage. But if you are lucky enough to get a home from directly from the owner, then the brokerage is not there, so you can save some money over there.
The next big chunk of money goes into transportation. So when you actually move into the country, you don't get yourself a car. Initially, you start using a public transport. Dubai is pretty well connected via the public transport, which mainly includes the metro, the buses. There are of course taxis and trams running in a certain part of the city. In order to avail the public transport, you have to get yourself an NOL card, which you can swipe and use in any sort of the public transports that I just mentioned. At the very onset, in order to get yourself the NOL card, you have to spend about 75 dirhams and you get a wallet balance of 25 dirhams. The rest 50 dirhams is refundable when you deposit back your card. And the minimum cost of transportation here in Dubai is about 3 dirhams to start with, and it can go up as you travel more kilometers. And the second option is getting yourself a car, which we just did a couple of months ago.
So we bought a car in the month of January 2020. It's an entry-level SUV from GMC. So our cost for the car as an EMI is around 2,000 dirhams a month. And of course the regular fuel prices and the maintenance that cost around like 400 to 500 dirhams a month, depending upon your usage of course. Like if you travel more on the weekends like us, then of course your fuel expenditure will be a bit high and the validity on a car will be a bit high, which can incur upon a good number of expenditures in terms of the services. So we pay 2,000 dirhams because we have chosen a GMC SUV, but you know, in many cases you can also find affordable options. You can go for cheaper cars, you can also rent a car, and the most important expenditure for getting a car is of course getting a license, a driving license in Dubai. Now that is pretty much costly. Mostly it ranges from 4,500 dirhams to 10,000 dirhams. It depends upon number of fields, number of exams you fail, and number of times you take the exam. As in my case, I just took it for 2 times and it was done in 8,000 dirhams or so.
The next big expense is utilities. Utilities comprises of your electricity, water, AC, internet and television connection, and gas of course.
So the next big expenditure that we incur is our grocery. Now in Dubai you can find hypermarkets and supermarkets like Carrefour, Lulu, wherein you can do your daily or a monthly grocery shopping. There are smaller departmental stores in your locality also, but those are pretty much costlier than what the supermarkets or the hypermarkets are offering.
However, with this pandemic and lockdown, online services have evolved pretty much here in Dubai. You can order your groceries online from sites like Noon Daily or Amazon and others that are available.
The next big expenditure is of course your miscellaneous expenditure, which includes your eating out, your travel, your weekend getaways, and so on and so forth. So it all depends upon how you actually lead the lifestyle and want to spend your weekends for. Another expenditure which also gets included in the miscellaneous expenditure is your credit card bill.
Last but not the least is your mobile expenditure. We as a couple spend about 200 dirhams every month for our phone bills. However, here in Dubai, international calling is pretty expensive and VoIP calls are limited. We have telecom providers like 2, Etisalat, Virgin, and you can use some of the authorized mediums such as Botem to make international calls back in your country.
Summing up the whole thing, the expenditure that we incur on a monthly basis are accommodation 3,280 per month, transportation is about 2,480 per month, utilities is something around 1,280 per month, groceries comes to 880 per month, miscellaneous is about 1,280 a month, connectivity is only about 280 a month. So in total, the expenditure is something around 9,080 a month, which is almost 1,80,000 INR.
So when we arrived for the very first time in the country, we had to incur certain expenditures, which were in terms of the accommodation, the utilities, the miscellaneous charges, and of course the transportation, just to start off with our life in this new country. When we were taking in rented accommodation, we had to pay Ijari, 215 dirhams, which is ideally the contract for 1 year or for that particular rented apartment. And of course, then it was rent for the next 3 months. If the rent is payable in a quarterly basis, then you have to pay the rent for the next 3 months to the landlord. Brokerage then came the brokerage for 1 month, which is the same as the rent, 3,200, and of course a security deposit of 2,200. Now, the total expenditure that we incurred in terms of accommodation was 16,215 dirhams. In terms of transportation, we didn't have a car at the very onset, so we had to rely on the local or the public transportation, and for which we had to get the NOL card. As we have said before, like NOL cards are usable in each and every modes of transportation in Dubai. It cost around 75 dirhams at the very onset to get hold of that card. Then, in terms of utilities, like even though you are staying in a rented apartment, you have to get your own registered services for electricity, AC, gas, and internet. So we had to do the same thing as well. So we had to pay around 2,130 for the DEWA, which is the Electricity and Water Authority of Dubai, of which 2,000 was refundable or is refundable. Then came AC, 700 dirhams, of which 1,500 was refundable. Gas, 1,600 dirhams. Internet, 2,350 dirhams, and we use a 5G connection over here. So the total that we spent on utility was 4,780 dirhams. And of course, miscellaneous charges, which include the basic grocery that we bought at the very first time when we arrived to, start off with living, and we just closed it off around 1,500 dirhams for the very first time. So the total expenditure that we had when we first arrived in this country and to start off with their life was 21,570 dirhams, which is close to 4,31,400 INR. The only reason why we are showing this to you is that whenever you arrive in this country, if your accommodation and fooding and lodging is not covered by your company, then you need to bring at least close to the similar amount of money in order to start off your life in this country, which also depends what kind of accommodation you're actually taking and how close or far it is from your office, and of course what's the conversion rate at that point of time. But this is ideally what you should bring.
So friends, we have made this video to let you know how exactly the cost of living in Dubai is, which also depends upon a number of factors, primarily how much salary you're getting in this country.
So if you found this video useful.
So if you found this video useful, then please like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to
hit the bell icon, and
there's nothing else.
So if you found this video interesting and useful, friends, do like the video and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And thank you so much for bearing us for so long.